Welcome to the Deep Six podcast, where we make a generational impact on you and yours. What we do here is explore a 6-point model into your health, your life, and your journey while you're here. So let's dive deep and help you thrive, not just survive. Hello, good afternoon. Hope this meets you well. Dr. Lewerenz here at the Deep Six podcast, and so excited today to bring you more entertainment, but also enlighten you with, health topics, a journey of life that we navigate through that have challenges. And I have somebody here that's going to really be vulnerable and tell us a lot of stuff about exciting things and how he's gotten through life and health stuff, and also created balance, and which is so important. In our 6-point model, we always talk about creating balance, in our at Longevity Health Institute at our office, and that's what the Deep Six is, our 6-point model in creating balance. So I think Mike Sullivan, my guest today, does that very well. He probably won't agree with me. I've known Mike for a long time. Mike is a CEO of a big ad agency in Dallas, Texas, and a friend and one of my buddies that we get into trouble with and have for years on the motorcycles, which we'll get into. But he's an inspirational guy. So Mike, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Jim. I'm looking forward to it for sure.
Now that is going to throw me off. What's over your shoulder? Just want you to know.
my, what is it over here? Yeah.
The Roswell
ET.
guy. Yeah.
We picked him up in Roswell. Yeah. Or Evil Knievel on the other side. Yeah.
Or Evil Knievel. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love it. No, I love it. Yeah. So, well, Mike, hey, listen, thanks for joining us. There's way too much to talk about. Let me introduce you and, speak on your bio a bit. And if I hack it a bit, take your liberty and do it some justice, because I probably will. But, one of the things that's so impressive is, and you don't even know this, but I take from you, and I've used in my practice, something that's in your bio, and that's cultivating such a wonderful workplace. But let me read this first, though. So, Mike is a CEO of Lewerenz. Again, it's in Dallas, Texas, an ad agency. He brings his seasoned hand of passion in championing the underdog success. In fact, actually, in the advertising world and in a business world, you've written a book called The Voice of the Underdog. His experience is spanning Fortune 50 giants and down to like small startups. And Loomis has, been a leader, especially in the Texas area, in advertising. He is the force of the Challenger brand, and you'll have to explain what that means, but you've won awards like the Small Agency of the Year from Ad Age. In fact, actually, is that 16 impressive years in a row? Is that accurate?
Well, that was the best places to work, 16 years in a row on that. So best places to work.
Yeah. That's impressive. We're going to talk about that a bit. Your many professional achievements, and, you're very dedicated to the community. You've actually been on the Dallas committee we were talking about that just earlier before the show, the U.S. Olympic Committee, and you actually you ran with the torch. That's so cool.
Carried the torch. Yeah.
I love that. And you said with Muhammad Ali, like he was there, and
that was back. Yeah. That's going back a bit, but yes. Yeah. It was a year.
Still, that's great. That's amazing. I love that. And, his commitment extends into volunteering at the Samaritan Inn, supporting young professionals. I know you have a studio in Dallas. You'll have to share with us that, because your little story about Vanilla Ice, maybe we'll get into that just a little bit, in your studio. I love, right? And Mike is a lifelong motorcycle enthusiast, enjoys traveling near and far, and he loves his Texas A&M Aggies. I won't get into that. We won't debate that, but I can appreciate that. I've been to Aggie Stadium. I don't know if you call it that, and it is impressive.
Kyle Field, but we'll go with Aggie Stadium if that's what you want to call it.
Yeah. Michiganer,
Yeah.
And Mike's Nirvana, and I love this. You said this, and what you sent me is you said Mike's Nirvana is participating in any of the above activities, like outdoors and motorcycle enthusiasts and travel and things like this, with his family. And he's got an awesome family. So Mike, again, thank you. Welcome and thank you. But I mean, I kind of dumbed this down. I hope you know.
No, but that's perfect. It's perfect, man. Thank you, Jim. Looking forward to our chat. Yeah.
Tell us a quick bit before we get into this. because it's so cool and it's so unique, is about, your experience with Vanilla Ice, excuse me, in your studio there in
Yeah,
Dallas.
well, so my partner Paul Loomis is the guy who produced Rob Van Winkle's first album, and that's when he became Vanilla Ice. It's was To the Extreme, and that's the single "Ice Ice Baby" was on that album. So Paul was my partner. He's retired now, but he's a composer and a producer. And Rob Van Winkle, right out of high school, walked into his studio and said, "Hey, I don't have any money, but I'm going to be the next hip hop sensation." And he was a white kid at the time that was completely a black genre. And lo and behold, first hip hop song to go number one
Yeah.
on the Billboard chart. So the rest is history. So yeah, kind of fun. And then Paul built this insane studio that still is downstairs, and we've had acts, everybody from Lady Gaga to Snoop Dogg to Beyonce Knowles to, all kinds of folks have worked down there. So it's
And
kind of
from the
fun.
medical, what's cool from the medical aspect, because when I've been down to Dallas to visit you and I come into Loomis and all that, it's a whole different world than a medical office. And what's really cool is it's got a good creative vibe, of course, just like your alien in the background there, but
Right on.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, but also having that studio and stuff was so impressive and so cool.
Yeah.
Your company, or his company, if you will, the studio, you've won awards, right?
Oh, well, yeah. Our engineer down there, Trey
Engineering.
Nagella, he's won 3 or 4 Grammys.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of awards, highly decorated. It's a hard business. And so it's interesting because when Paul made the money with Vanilla Ice, he made some money, not a ton, but he pushed it all in and he built that studio. And all of a sudden, his economics changed dramatically. And so
Yeah.
I like to joke, and we talk about it. It's like I came and I built an ad agency to support his music habit because, again, studio rentals is it's just a tough way,
Yeah.
to make a big living. And so, yeah, I joined the agency 23 years ago, which is hard to believe. I came in as president, equity partner, and yeah, we just grew this thing, and it's become a really, really nice business. I'm proud of it.
Yeah.
We've got national clients, regional clients, but it's just been a great ride, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah, yeah. No, super cool. So I always start the podcast here. Excuse me. I start the podcast with a quote. Okay, and I know this will probably hit you a bit because we share a lot of personal things and journey life things and all that. So this is a quote from James Thurber. It's better to know some of the questions than all the answers. And let's explore some questions with you and kind of how things shaped your life. But you like that quote?
I
Are you
love that
impressed?
quote.
Are you impressed I came up with that?
I'm pretty impressed with that for you, Jim, definitely. And it reminds me of a quote, one of my favorites. It's something like, "I'd rather have questions that can't be answered than answers that can't be questioned."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in the spirit of inquiry, definitely, let's dive in and
Yeah.
answer all the questions and
Well,
questions
and on the
all the answers.
medical end,
Yeah.
I just want to say this because it's like so important. And I tell patients this often, and this is just a literally organic segue here, is that so many patients and people for health and chronic conditions and diseases and, symptoms, let's just call it symptoms,
Yeah.
fatigue, back pain, whatever. They go to get an answer and they expect the physician or the provider, the practitioner to just have it, just have that answer.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. Okay.
Yeah.
And the reality of it is, and this is going to sound crazy to say this, but we are just still scratching the surface of the physiologic knowledge and the biochemical knowledge of the body and of health.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
an evolution. And so I always there's a Dr. Gladden, and he says this. He says, I'd rather be married to my questions than my answers. And so many people I find in our practice and in just medicine, they have issues. They'll have something going on and
Yeah.
they're struggling. That's why they end up with us and we hear this. And like someone gave them an answer, but they still not got it, head anywhere. And that answer may be somewhat correct, but it's not the whole story.
Yeah.
And that's where I think at least in the healthcare space, it really, that resonated with me.
I think culturally, we just expect a lot of doctors, and certainly traditionally. But I've found in my own journey too, it's like you really need to be an active participant in your healthcare. Like Google is no substitute for your physician, obviously, but I think, you know, becoming informed and learning about how your body works, your specific body works. I think it really needs to be sort of a collaborative process in that respect. And I don't know if you agree with that or not, but I
Yeah,
really feel
no,
like
it is. Oh yeah.
um, going to a doctor and just expecting a magic cure or a magic answer, it's just unreasonable, really,
And that even
in
gets
every
down
respect.
to,
So
which you know this about my practice, but in our model is that we need and you deserve time. So this average 7-minute visit in
yeah,
the Western, traditional allopathic approach in healthcare is a complete joke because you can't get
yeah,
anywhere. I mean,
yeah,
how can I listen to you and how can you provide and we have this, this relationship and get a true result when I have 7 minutes and I have a lobby waiting and it's not realistic.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
obviously
yeah.
we actually spend, 20 minutes to an hour with most of our patients, but I think that's critical too. But listen, so let's do this because this is fun. This is the fun
Yeah,
part because I get to reminisce a bit. So let's
yeah.
go back. Okay. And Mike, take us back to like, how did you, from your perspective, end up from Farmington Hills riding motocross bikes in the back of a sub that was unfinished
Right.
and going to a community college to down in Dallas, Texas, and at the pinnacle of an ad agency?
Yeah. So, right. So, it's
I know
funny. I
that's a
think is a
lot.
little, yeah, it's a lot. I guess it's a lot. Everybody's got a unique journey, and I do. And I think as a kid, I like if in terms of just achieving what I wanted to achieve, I have. And so it's nice to be able to look back and say that. But really, as a kid, Jimmy, it's interesting. I was reflecting on this a little bit. I had such self-esteem issues as a little guy, and I think a lot of people do, and a lot of people they deal with it in different ways. But when I was a kid, I mean, I had attention issues. I didn't do great in school. Ergo, I wound up in a community college, which I think is really actually a great way to go nowadays. I didn't have, I wasn't going to get into the big school getting out of school. But when I was little, the very first thing that I ever did that felt like accomplishing something was I got a job as a dishwasher at 11 years old at a restaurant because I wanted a motorcycle. And man, I worked for 3 or 4 months as a dishwasher on Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights. I kid you not.
Love it. Love
And
it.
I saved up enough money. Yeah, I bought a motorcycle, and it was great because like my mom was dead set against me getting a motorcycle. It was only my dad going, "Damn it, Mike! If you can get a job and get the money, you can have a motorcycle." And so I took him up on that. And so doing that, I mean, it really it was a huge accomplishment. I mean, I'll never forget the feeling, at 11 years old, riding a 100cc, street bike down the street in my neighborhood and feeling like, man, I bought this. I can drive now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Freedom.
I think, yeah, freedom, all of that. And I think it just started to become kind of part of my kind of forming my little identity. And then the other thing was I wasn't super athletic as a little kid. My dad was a big stick and ball jack, but he was also really busy. And so I never got into baseball and football, and I didn't even understand the game until I went to college and kind of watched it as a fan. So, but I was competitive. I had that streak too. And so I thought, man, here's an outlet. Maybe I can race these things, and at some point, I got the bright idea, yeah, to go and do that. And, the tracks in Michigan. Michigan was a real proving ground for motocross athletes. I mean, some of the best in the country have come out of there. I certainly was not one of the best in the country, but I got pretty good. And I had this feeling, honestly, as a kid, thinking about this, it's like, if I can race a motorcycle, if I can do that and succeed, I can do anything. Like it was like the scariest thing I could think of doing,
Yeah.
and I did it. And I, and it's like everything that gets bound up and wound up in the idea of racing a motorcycle, the just the pain, the getting hurt, the winning, all the competition, it just became a big part of who I was. And so, yeah, I wound up. I graduated high school, couldn't get into a great college. I could have gotten into a college, but not a great one. And so I went to community college. Then my family moved to Houston, and I wound up going to Texas A&M, and that's where I really began to blossom. Because it's funny, these little big shifts and changes in your life allow you to reinvent yourself. And so at 18 and 19 years old, I completely reinvented myself. I became a student. I got really involved at Texas A&M, which at the time was at the time it was 36,000 students. Today it's 80,000. I was
Yeah, it's crazy.
a reporter on the daily paper. I was a opinion page editor, all that stuff. And, those were important formative years. We have this big debate now culturally about whether kids should go to college or not. And expense is a huge thing. But for me, it was super important in my development. And then from there, I dove off and started my career,
Yeah. And side note, Mike and I, how we know each other is I raced motocross. I was about 12 or 13, and my brother
Yeah.
would drag me to Baja Acres, in
Yeah.
Michigan, and race. And he runs into you, right? He
Yeah.
somewhere
Yeah.
in the pits or whatever at the race, and you guys are
You
having some
couldn't miss
big,
your brother. You couldn't miss him. He had
yeah,
all the best gear, the best bike, the coolest car,
of
and he
course,
was the
yeah.
shittiest rider.
Right, right, right,
That was-
right. He wasn't
Which
even
he will
finishing
tell
the
you. I'm not
race.
talking. I'm not bagging on him. He will tell you that.
He would say
But
that. I know that. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
But he ran into you, and in your guys' talk or whatever, probably in the pits or
yeah,
whatever, it was like, "Where do you live?" And you ended up
yeah,
literally living here. We're like hours up northern Michigan, and
yeah,
here you end up living on our street in our sub,
yeah,
and then your brother Casey, we're all
yeah,
close.
yeah,
He's my age. So we end up all like being buddies and raising hell in the back of the sub and building a motocross track and going up north and you name it. It was crazy. And what's crazy is we're all still here and
yeah,
we're all still kicking and doing, proudly, I say this well.
yeah. And we're still riding dirt bikes, which I
This is
think is
true.
pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah,
59 years old, I'm still out there, and it's still a big part of what I do and who I am.
yeah,
So love
yeah.
all that stuff.
No,
Yeah,
I do too. And it's part of being out the outdoors. We talk about that all the time and just being,
yeah,
having energy to do things and, you know,
yeah.
be,
Absolutely.
full of life and stuff like that. So, um, by the way, since we're on this, I think this is a good time I can, ask you and share with you a bit, or you can share with us, excuse me, a bit, is you recently, because you thought you were slowing down a bit and you got an E mountain bike.
I did.
And we're both big mountain bike advocates and,
Yep, yep.
enthusiasts and, we're out in trails all the time. And you mind sharing with us what happened?
Yeah, I will. So, this falls under the heading "Nobody rides for free." So, yeah, I got an e-bike, specialized Levo bike. Love it. And contrary to popular myth, you can get a great workout on an e-bike, and I do. And I've got a favorite trail close to the house. And anyway, in December of 2020, I was on a borrowed bike from the shop because my bike was having problems, and the bars were a little wide. And anyway, I clipped a tree with the right bar, ejected me into a tree on the left, and I broke 11 ribs, clavicle, a bladed lung, and I burst fractured my T5. So
Your spine.
it was, bad injury. And so, that was the worst injury I've ever had on two wheels, and I've had a bunch, unfortunately. So I'm laying there on the ground in the dirt at 4:30 on December 20th. So the sun is really low and it's coming down, and there's nobody else on the trail. And my phone is 12 feet away from me. And I'm thinking, man, I'm going to be out here all night. And this dude rolled up, and he turned out to be the captain of the local fire department. So from hitting the tree forward, everything was great luck. I had a great surgeon. I did get a spinal fusion. But with your help and a whole lot of work, I got back on the bike 3 months later. Now I
Yeah.
wasn't riding regularly 3 months later, but I do ride. I'm back out there now,
Yeah. Yeah.
so made a
Yeah.
full
Yeah.
and complete recovery. And
Yeah. And I don't think you mind me sharing is
no,
what we did, and, I have a lot of patients remotely, but what I did with you is put you on a few things like peptides, regenerative peptides,
yep,
to help the post-surgical healing, BPC 157, which is an amazing regenerative healer, helps tissue repair, you name it.
yep,
And, as well as, you did all the work as far as PT and everything, had you on, multiple nutraceuticals and that,
yep.
but that you really believe that made a big difference.
There's no doubt about it. Even the physician that I was seeing here was like, "Wow, you've really recovered remarkably." Again, so this was a couple of years ago. I was 56. your body does not heal as quickly as it once did. I used to get hurt a lot and feel like it hurt for a few weeks and be gone. But the recovery was really pretty exceptional. I mean, I'm not going to lie, it was painful. I mean, it's the most painful thing I think I've ever done. But and my wife is a nurse, and so she watched this as well, and she was kind of blown away, like, wow, this is moving along a lot more quickly than we anticipated. So, part of it too is that staying in shape. Like, the irony is that I was really in great shape because I rode so much and I do other things. I got hurt on it, but it also helped me heal up. So,
and actually that was my experience too. So I had an injury with a shoulder once and a knee, and I used BPC, nothing like your injury, but just, the chronic wear and tear of working out and mountain biking and et cetera. And it was amazing because something I had struggled with for months, it really helped repair. And really, it's the key thing too that I just want to share is it's natural. So you're taking an amino acid chain that's called a peptide, and when they chain these together, you would then make certain types of peptides. And BPC, which stands for Body Protective Complex 157, is something that helps this tissue repair. And if you think people go, what's a peptide? Well, peptides, if you had a lot of peptides, you make a protein. So it's all natural stuff. What it's doing is helping signaling, and we get an improvement in so many things like growth factors and fibroblasts and growth hormone and all these things that actually help tissue repair. So it's really amazing. We use it all in our practice every day for some condition, and not even an injury. So even like digestive disorders and an inflammatory disorder. But
you gave it to me when I did my rotator cuff a year ago. And it helped then as well. I mean, it really sped up the whole recovery process. So.
Absolutely. And you said something that's super key, which is, when you're older, and even your fifth decade, you're not going to heal and recover like you're in your second, like you're a teenager or 20s. It just doesn't happen, So listen, hey, let me ask you a couple things I think that are really key, and kind of like why I wanted to have you as a guest, because I mean, we could talk about motocross and
talk moto all day long. We bore everybody to death, but we could do it. Yeah.
And by the way, when I say he's an enthusiast, he knows every pro. My connections, by the way, in the pro industry and motocross are all through Mike Sullivan and obviously, John Martini, your buddy.
That's right. Got to mention Johnny.
I got to give him some credit. Yeah. But they're not just, they're the real deal. I mean, you've never got out of it. I got out of it for about 20 years. And then I kind of slowly got back into it. Actually, a lot of it was
we pulled you back in like the mob.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know what you're missing. So, but listen, success comes hand in hand with a lot of challenges. And can you share with us some of your, if you will, some of your biggest hurdles, some of your biggest, whether it was in the business or even from a health perspective or personally and stuff? Because really, what the Deep Six is about is how important it is to look at your whole system and your whole, like your life, your daily life and how we function. And so importantly, these things go together and they have synergistic effects. And, maybe you can enlighten us a bit on that.
Yeah, I will. So, in terms of my story, so I graduate school and I've got a real achiever personality, hard charging. And, I worked at a couple of agencies and wound up joining a small firm, which is 6 people, and just through hustle and hard work. I mean, I turned out to be really good at business development, and I helped that agency grow from like 6 people to 125 in 4 or 5 years, which is really nice growth for an agency. We were the hottest shop in the Southwest 2 years in a row. But my winning formula was just kill it, just always on and striving and achieving and going and so on and so forth. I wound up here at Loomis and continued sort of running the same program, and we built it. We were running really well back in 2013. And this is a real challenge when you're sort of for an entrepreneurial mindset. I mean, these sort of things happen,
so
but
things are going hot. Like
they're going hot. They're going great. We're growing and going.
And I see this every day, by the way.
Yeah. Well, honestly, and I've done plenty of reflection on this, and you'll understand why in a moment, but through really no fault of my own, I can say there's things I might have been done a little differently, but regardless, in about a 90-day period, we were about 60 people at the time. In a 90-day period, I lost 50% of my top line. So 50% of my revenue went away. And
wow.
we'd been, I'd been doing it for 10 years at that point at this agency. We were really solid, really stable. But I cannot tell you how significant an existential crisis that set off in my own life, because I had to let go, 25 or 30 people who are just outstanding. I mean, I'm all about culture. My North Star is like, build the kind of place that you want to go on Monday morning. We just had this beautiful little company rocking and rolling. And, you show up to work and next thing you know, you've got to let all these people go. And then you've got to hustle like crazy to rebuild it. I was looking at a forecast going into 2014 that was $1 million in the black. I had personal guarantees. I mean, it was just so stressful.
A lot of pressure.
Dude, the stress was unreal. I was not well resourced for the stress. And when I kind of tell you what happened, you'll go, yeah, no kidding. Well, so like a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people who are under stress, I started having real problems with sleep. Like I would be up all night. I just literally could not sleep. This is going and going and going.
Yeah.
You might get to sleep and you wake up and it's not turning off. And that started to become a real problem. I mean, it started to fry me out. So I went to a doctor who I actually started to see a therapist. He was a psychologist, and he prescribed me. First of all, he put me on antidepressants, because I was literally auguring into a depression. And I mean, early in my life, I think I had some depressive tendencies. So this is something that I felt like, okay, yeah, this is a big crisis, and this makes sense. And so I did that. And maybe it helped. I mean, it must have helped a little bit. But then for the sleep, he gave me a drug called Klonopin, otherwise known as clonazepam. It's a benzodiazepine.
Yep.
And I was on it for several years. So in subsequently, we were talking a little earlier, you really need to collaborate with your physicians. You need to understand what drugs do to you. You need to understand your own health. Well, I just took them. I didn't do my homework. I just took them night after night. And his direction for, look, if you really can't sleep, take two, take more than one.
Right.
And what was crazy is that I started over this happened over probably the process of a year to 18 months. I started to have some really dark thoughts. And, people don't like to talk about this stuff, but man, mental health struggles are real. And I think a lot of people have them, a lot more people have them than like to talk about them. And especially when you have super dark thoughts, people don't like to talk about that at all. It's like radioactive. But I mean, these thoughts wouldn't go away. They were suicidal thoughts. For somebody who's never had a thought like that, it may seem completely foreign. It may seem scary. It is scary. I don't know what it's like for someone who's never had that thought, because I did. And I can just tell you that what I try to do is just push that away. No, that's just, you tell yourself all kinds of things. Well, long story short, this went on for months and months and months and months. And ultimately, I actually made an attempt, which is really, it's hard to talk about. And I'm obviously sharing it here and now because I think it's of good service to people who are high achievers and who are, thoughtful, smart human beings and think that they're too smart to have that kind of thought. That's bullshit. I mean, it just is. And so anyway, I did.
Like things are going too
life's
good.
Too good objectively, like what,
from the
but dude,
outside.
Dude, like it's weakness or it's this or that. I mean, believe me, all the things that people think about that, I thought about that. And the truth is, when you're in that space and place, there's nothing like logic. In fact, the logic is telling you lies, like your family, everybody's better off if you're gone. It's just crazy, crazy shit. So anyway, I did. And that won me a week stay in a psychiatric unit. It's called being 5150, I guess is the vernacular in I don't know if it's hospital code or whatever, but I was literally, I woke up in the hospital and I didn't have the option of leaving. And you talk about getting your attention.
Dramatic. Wow.
It was unreal. Well, here's the thing. So I get out, and first of all, that doctor who's prescribing those pills never came to see me. And he kept it. So when I got out, I thought, holy shit, I woke up like, man, I can't believe that happened. I can't believe you, like this moment of clarity came upon me, like, wow, I've got to fix this. Well, he kept prescribing the pills and I kept taking them. And so, for a week or two, like, I didn't have any of those dark thoughts. I thought, okay, I'm good. Wow. I'm actually, I've cleared this. Well, 3 or 4 weeks later, maybe a month later, the thoughts started to come back. And then I thought, holy shit, this isn't me. What's going on? And I started to do some research on clonazepam and Klonopin. And I came across an article, and I'll never forget it. It was doing my own Google research. The heading of the article was clonazepam, America's most dangerous drug, question mark.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? And then I
I'll
read
say
into
benzos,
this.
even just benzos in
Yeah,
general.
benzo.
Right?
Yeah, and one of the primary side effects is suicidal ideation. And so you think about it, and like, I don't have to tell you, Doc, what the trend has been on depression and suicide over the last 10 to 15 years. I mean, Gallup has studied this, and it's like back in, like, I think it's like 2015, something like 15% of all people were depressed or reported depression. Now it's like 29%.
Yeah.
Suicide up, all that stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
this is
Suicide
really
is supposed to, this year
yeah,
or by
yeah,
2025, overcome
yeah,
the ninth leading cause of death. So it's the first
yeah,
time ever it'll go from the 10th leading cause of death to the ninth. Okay. Because it's more than double.
yeah. It's crazy. And among entrepreneurs, by the way, the index is even higher because of
Yeah.
all the stress that I was talking
The
about:
pressure.
financial
Oh, yeah,
pressures, long work
for sure.
hours, isolation, uncertainty, all these things. And so, honestly, sometimes it's important for me to say this and put it out here publicly, because I really feel like I'm talking on behalf of people who were successful in their suicide attempt. I mean, it
Yeah.
kind of chokes me up a little bit because I could easily not be here.
Yeah.
So anyway, I realized, holy crap, I can't take this stuff anymore. So I quit that. I quit that doctor, and man, 30 days, 60 days, it's like the sun came out again. I mean, it was just, and it set me off on really a psycho-spiritual journey that I've been on for the last 10 years, and really figuring out, okay, now how do I take good care of myself, and
Yeah.
really reevaluating everything about the way I was approaching life, my winning formula, everything.
Yeah.
So from
And
just
if I
regulating my
can
sleep.
stop you,
Yeah,
like
jump
just a
in.
no,
Yeah.
just a quick second, is this because I just want to share this because this is where it's misunderstood. So a benzodiazepine hits a GABA receptor in the brain, okay, and it feels great. Why? Because we're all on this high autonomic response. We're all ramped up. And by the way, it's like the full throttle motocross bike, right? It's like
Mhm.
we're used to that. And an entrepreneurial, a business owner, a high achiever, a type A, you name it,
Yeah.
that's normal to them. But it's hard to get off that high autonomic response and off that like hamster wheel. And
Yeah.
so what's the easiest thing to do than to change a lifestyle? It's easier to take a benzo. And back
Yeah.
from the 70s and 80s and all that, they were handed out very, very regularly, especially in most people out there know that I'm a doctor to a lot of entertainers and stuff. And so, I mean, my dad was, and that was very common in the 70s and 80s, and didn't know the consequences, et cetera, the downer and then the upper and et cetera. But my point is, when you take a benzodiazepine, and even in the tiniest dose, you're hitting that GABA receptor, but you're hitting it not in the sense of like just a calm, like say something would be like a meditation or like a yoga or like a cold, face splash of water, or maybe just even deep breathing exercises or something like that. Or by the way, the calming we get with a loved one, hugging them or just having a conversation or even a pet. It's like a major hit to that GABA receptor. When you're hitting that receptor over and over and over, eventually then you start to lose dopamine. And when dopamine comes down, then all of a sudden it's not just that you're calm, you're like blah. And you
That was
start to
it.
have those dark thoughts and you're like, why am I even
Yeah.
here? What do I even care about? And
Yeah.
what's crazy about it is it's really just takes, kind of like we were saying before, is just a practitioner to care a bit, to pump the brakes a bit and go, whoa, let's look at your life and look, we're not talking about taking this one day or 1 week or somebody just had a death in sudden or that kind of thing, but to take that all the time for sleep is extremely, extremely, extremely unhealthy. and then it becomes the
Yeah.
norm. It's like if, a little's good, more is better, and it just becomes the
Yep.
norm. And
Yep.
we see this, unfortunately. I used to see it a lot more. So fortunately,
Yeah.
I do see it less and less in the last, say, 10 years.
Thank
But there's
God.
there's much, much safer ways to handle those
Yep.
effects. And I do in the office all the time. We do at Longevity Health Institute. We do this all the time, where look at the lifestyle, use something natural, use some lifestyle approaches, and you don't have to go down that road. But sadly,
Yep.
it's easier in those 5 to 7 minute visits to just give somebody a benzo.
Well, and that's the thing too, going back to what we were talking about earlier. I think people, they want an immediate fix and an immediate solution. I sure did. I was like, gosh, I can't sleep. What am I doing? And so I think there's a whole lot of things that are sort of colluding, to make
Yeah.
these sort of situations really bad. But I just know that, when that happened, people who know me were shocked, like, Mike, of all the people I would never expect. But this is, I think, the sneaky thing about it. These drugs are powerful, and you can mess yourself up with them. So
No,
at any rate, so what was interesting is that I got off those, and by the way, I had been successful rebuilding my business through all of this. Like, my entire environment, like, nobody knew how badly I was struggling.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody. My wife did.
It's
My poor
amazing, by the
wife.
way, that
Oh, dude,
that
like,
you could do that. I mean, that says a
well,
lot to you, and your testament
yeah.
of strength. And I know that may sound silly, but that's
Well, it does, Jim,
impressive.
and it also is, like, I think it's cultural too, especially males. It's like we can't reach out and ask for help. We can't say, "Hey, I'm struggling. I'm really, drowning here." I think women are much better at this, but even women, you don't want to be a burden to anybody. You don't want to ruin your friendships. I mean, there's all kinds of crap that just goes on. But for whatever reason, I put on a brave face, and nobody, not my employees, not my friends. I mean, they might have thought, "Hey, Mike seems a little flat. He doesn't seem like old Mike anymore. He's not laughing or joking or whatever." But the one who really knew, obviously, was my wife, and I think my kids. They were living their own lives, going to school and doing all that stuff, thankfully. So they weren't present for a lot of my struggle. But at any rate, I came out on the other side of this, and honestly, the sun started to come out again, and I remember just sort of feeling like the feeling of joy again, like, whoa, this is awesome. And because it got to a point where I just couldn't even remember the last time I laughed or felt just
Yeah.
goofy, or whatever.
Right.
And so, but I really, it set me off on a real deep psycho-spiritual journey. I mean, it just, in terms of, like, what's this all about? I was raised a Catholic. I never really connected with the faith as a kid. I never really connected, frankly, with, many of the faith traditions. And so, more importantly even than that, is I got sort of a baseline in terms of regulating my sleep. Like, I'm a fiend about my sleep now. I don't care if I'm traveling or what, man. I'm in bed by 9 o'clock, and I get up early. I'm a 5 o'clock riser, but I get my 7.5 hours.
I do know
Come
this.
hell or high water, man.
He's stayed at my house before. It's kind of annoying.
Yeah, exactly. This game's I'm out.
I mean,
Unless
I get up
Supercross is
early,
on.
and
Yeah.
you're blowing a bullhorn.
Yeah,
Dude,
yeah, and
come
I'm
on.
not kidding. You get
Yeah,
a yeah,
it's
yeah.
Saturday.
When yeah, and I developed a meditation practice, which I dabbled in meditation for a long, long time and just couldn't. I got attention issues and all that kind of stuff. But I got trained in transcendental meditation, which really works for me. It's mantra based, and so I in April I completed, like, my first full year of meditation. It was really kind of interesting to document that, but that's been very helpful. I do daily walks, a minimum of 3 miles. For me, is really important. I do have a therapist. I don't see her very often anymore, but when I feel like I need to, and I do. That's really good.
I'm proud of you for that, by the way, because the only reason I
Yeah,
say that is this. I've done therapy. I think actually I always say this to patients, especially men. And I see,
yeah,
by the way, this, but just for the audience, I take care of CEOs and entrepreneurs and people that are running billion-dollar companies.
yeah.
And, if you say something about therapy, it's like a weakness.
I
And
know.
I say it's the biggest gift you could ever give yourself. And the
Yeah,
reason is because it allows you to have different perspective and insight. And none of us are perfect, by the way.
yeah,
You're just actually opening up to be, how can I thrive better? How can I, like, approach some of these things better? And it's
yeah.
absolutely not a weakness. That's just an ego issue. And that's a guy issue that we got to get over.
100% ego. 100% ego. It's a weakness. That's the weakness, is you're succumbing to your ego and the stories you're telling yourself.
Yep.
I consider it a gift to myself. I'm a lifelong learner. I'm big into self-development, personal growth, all that good stuff. And it's essential. I mean, I won't get into who
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
therapist
No,
is, but I mean, she's fantastic. And so, you got to find the right one.
for
It's
sure.
like anything in life. And so that's been a key component to all this. I mean, she was
And I
terrific in
think it's
helping me.
so key because if, maybe you can enlighten us a bit if you don't mind sharing a little bit
Yeah.
more. Thank you, by the
Hmm.
way, for sharing all
Yeah.
this because you are, Mike,
Absolutely.
you're making a difference. I'm telling you
Mhm.
this because it's not talked about enough. And I
Yeah.
see it in the practice. We see it
Yeah.
and hear about it. I mean, I can tell you patients of mine that they've had, siblings, they've had friends, they've had family
Hmm.
take their life.
Hmm.
I was actually this last weekend at the Wounded Warriors
Yep.
Foundation fundraiser and at the Townsend Hotel here in Birmingham, Michigan, a big event. And there's a
Yep.
guy up there that just made a Netflix, special. And he had lost 2 people in Afghanistan, one of his good buddies, 2 people, and 6 in suicide since he's been back. I mean, it's
It's
just
just, it's tragic.
it's
Yeah.
out. I mean, so
Yeah.
it's so out there
Yeah.
and so prevalent. But one thing that I started to mention and kind of say, and maybe you can touch upon this a bit, is we think also of mental issues, whether it's a struggle, an anxiety, a depression, an apathy, an overthinking, an OCD. We think of these as they're extrinsic out there. Okay. It
Hmm.
also can be biochemical and it also can be both. And
Yeah.
what I mean by that is, and that's where I think it's really tough because someone like yourself, and I'm by the way, I'm surmising. I'm like, but we wouldn't know because we didn't have labs and neurotransmitters and
Yeah.
hormone levels and et cetera. But you're in your 40s grinding or your late 30s, early 40s, mid 40s grinding and high achiever, go, 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 go. And yet here we are in the crux of life for a hunter gatherer man with, frontal lobe drive. Okay.
Yep.
And our hormones are being reduced. Our gut health is getting diminished. Our nutrient pools, because we're eating and drinking more, are way down. And then we add all this psychological, social stress and insomnia because of what's going on. And all of those matter. So it's so easy you can see that the wheels can fall off.
Yeah. 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 I mean, honestly, our brains were not built for modern living in so many
Yeah.
respects, but here we are.
Yeah.
By
Yeah.
the way, I think you just called me a Neanderthal, but I'll let that go. It,
Not you. No, we are.
no, I'm kidding.
What I,
Teasing, of course. Yeah. No, I know. I know. We
but it's
are.
so,
We,
it's so funny
we
because
do.
but the truth is that, I'll get men in my office all
Yeah.
the time and sitting in
Yeah.
front of me and they're, again, they're usually takes them a lot to get there. So if they get to me, I'm not the first doctor they saw. So if they get to me and they're sitting in front of me, I know it's like something's up. And when they
Yep.
start telling me like they can't sleep and, they just went through a divorce and, their business is booming, but it's a big struggle and this and that. And they're depressive or they're anxious and, they're weak, they're tired. They don't
Drinking a
kind of
bottle of wine
care.
at night.
Yeah.
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 Hmm.
And also
Yeah.
but I look at, we look at biochemicals, we look at hormone levels, we look at testosterone and we look at, their insulin and their growth hormone and their thyroid. All these matter and
Yep.
matter so profoundly. I'm going to tell you, and I think you had some experience in this, that they can hugely
Yeah.
impact the mood, yet we're just looking at lifestyle. So the lifestyle and what's going on matter, but it's also the biochemical and the chemistry that matter
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, yeah, and I did find out that I did have on top of all this good stuff, like a testosterone challenge, and I did have some testosterone therapy. I've got a complicating condition with the lymphatic leg so I got to be careful with that. But it made a huge difference for me. It really did. It
Yeah.
took the aches and pains away. It bumped me up, like my afternoon kind of slump went away. Really, really good stuff. But mostly, for me, it was just getting in touch with my practices and staying consistent with them over the course of time. And the other thing is, I'll say that, like, I don't drink. I've never been a big drinker, but I don't at all. I think that really does help.
Thank you for that, by the way.
What's that?
I just said thank you for that, by the way, that you haven't been a
Yeah.
big drinker because I've been with you a while, and
Yeah,
it's
you add
wild
drinking into
enough.
what I do. Yeah,
Listen,
no.
brother, with love, it's wild enough without
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
without you having some cocktails.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, and then the other thing that I did, Jim, this is so again, I mentioned that I this whole episode a decade ago now, thankfully in the rearview mirror, kicked off this whole psycho-spiritual journey. So, what's it all about kind of stuff, the big existential questions that I've always sort of been that kind of a seeker. Well, about 2 years ago, a little more than 2 years ago now, I I had an opportunity to go do an ayahuasca ceremony.
Okay.
So little experience with plant medicine, and I'll share on this
Yeah.
because this was important, for me
Okay.
as well. So I've always been curious. Like I'm an adventurous spirit. A lot of curiosity. I've never done any heavy drugs. I'm not. I've just always been afraid of that kind of thing because, frankly, I feel like I have an addictive personality, and I never wanted to do like cocaine or, God forbid, something like heroin. Because shit, just
Yeah.
terrible. Plus, it's just never felt like a good thing to do. But a little cannabis and, like I said, light drinking. But I did a lot of research around psychedelics, and of course, we're in the middle of what would feel like a sort of a psychedelic renaissance. And there's been all sorts of you'd have to be living under a rock not to know that people are talking about using psychedelics therapeutically. And so anyway, I had an
It's
opportunity.
really growing and helping people.
Yeah, 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 yeah. An opportunity 2 years ago. A friend invited me to go participate in an ayahuasca ceremony with a shaman who's been practicing 25 years. And like, this is not recreational stuff. And I think people understand that now.
We're
It really
talking,
is.
just not to interrupt you, but we're talking
Yeah.
supervised.
Yeah. This is still, below line stuff in the United States. We're not quite there. But anyway, we were able to arrange this and do this. And so I won't, honestly. There's plenty of stuff out there on the internet. You can look at YouTube, you can listen to Joe Rogan, you can listen to whoever, and you can get, sort of a download on like what the experience itself is like. And honestly, there's no real way to explain it with words. I mean,
Well, I've
the
had a few
experience itself.
patients,
Oh, dude. Yeah.
in the practice on their own. They seek this out, and I actually,
Mhm.
both of them that I'm thinking of, actually, I wasn't even privy to some of their stuff. I knew they were struggling a bit, and they had a therapist and even
Yeah.
had a psychiatrist and that, and they're seeing me
Yeah.
for some other things, and they were actually doing really, really well. But obviously, I can't feel what's inside, and so they went
No.
on a plant medicine experience, but for them, it was nothing but a freeing, loving experience where they always had felt like, this heavierness, if with this, at least from what I can recall, like worrying and anxiety and just,
Yeah.
and not just a peace, and they like have peace now.
Yeah, I did have a huge experience. Turns out ayahuasca is like the grandmother. They call it the grandmother plant. It's the biggest, frankly, psychedelic experience that you can have. Is on this medicine, depending, of course, on the
Well, that's just
dose.
like you, go big or go home. That's just like you.
Shit, but what's crazy is I don't know that I really realized that until afterwards. I'm like,
Until
holy God, what just happened? But for me, the thing that I will say about the experience itself, and then I'll just talk about a couple of the effects and the durable effects, because again, it's been 2 years. First of all, for me, and if you haven't done this, it might not make sense, but if you have, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. It literally felt like I woke up when this came on. It felt like I woke up from a dream, and it felt like this is the dream. Like, this is the dream, and I woke up. I had an experience that was so unnerving afterwards that I did a lot of research on it. It's called DMT deja vu, because DMT is the chemical, I guess, in ayahuasca that
Yeah.
activates the
DMT. Yep.
psychedelic experience. Yeah. I had a notebook with me as I was going into this, because the shaman said, bring a notebook. And she meant to journal after, but I'm like writing while I'm doing this. And the very first entry in my notebook was, I've been here before. I mean,
Yeah. Wow.
the sensation that I had arrived at where I had always been was just like mind blowing. It gives me kind of chills just to say it out loud again. Anyway, I won't get into just like
Yeah.
the fireworks and all the stuff you see with psychedelics and all that, because you can find that in other places. But for me, I think that a couple of big takeaways. first of all, it felt like I woke up from a dream. It really did. I went into this darn near an ontological materialist. That is somebody who thinks like, yeah, you know what, this physical existence is all there is, and then it's lights out, and we, disappear into eternity. And yeah, it wasn't that fun and whatever. I absolutely don't believe that now. In fact, I know that deep in my being that I got in touch with this concept of eternity, the eternal nature of everything that I just never even. I mean, you can maybe touch on these things intellectually. You might be able to read poetry and get at it, but woo, it's like in me. Like I get this. I absolutely touched the vastness of the eternal, and there's no other way to explain it. So I'll just leave that there. The other thing that was crazy, Jim, was this getting in touch with love, and I mean transcendent love. So, and I didn't even talk about this for almost probably the first year afterwards, because it takes a while to integrate all this stuff too. It's not just about the experience; it's then what do you do with it. But here's the thing. So I've got two kids, and my daughter's the oldest. And the first time I held my daughter, the way I explain that to people is like, it wasn't like a new program got downloaded. It was like a whole new operating system downloaded on me. I had never felt such love and such fear, and terror all at once. It was the emotion of it was just so powerful, and I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
in this ayahuasca ceremony, it's I got in touch with a love so big that it made that seem small. It made that seem like there was like I'm living with a restrictor plate on this side of the experience, and my heart can't open as big as it did in this experience. There's just no words for it. And so I'll leave it there. And so the message for me was like, man, all it is about love. And then and again, you'll hear this from people, but it was absolutely the profound truth for me. The last thing, this is crazy, in all the wisdom literature, you read about the illusion of separation, like we're all one, we're all one thing. And yeah, okay, I guess, it's a nice thought, it sounds a little hippie to me, whatever. Dude, I saw that. Like I felt like that. It's all one thing. Like there is no difference between you and me, and between me. It's like, it's just one thing. And again, there's not much more I can say about that, except that it is freaking, it took me, honestly, it's kind of there was some fear mixed up in that for a while afterwards. Again, it took probably a year for me to stop thinking about that experience every single day. I worked with my therapist. I talked to other people. That's the process of integration, and I still think about it. So what is the long lasting outcome of that? Because again, they don't know, there's all kinds of great research being done at places like Johns Hopkins on how psychedelics work on people and why it can help, pull them out of depression or reduce anxiety. I don't know what the mechanism is or why it works the way it works, but I can tell you that I didn't go back on anxiety medication. In fact, I understand anxiety. I don't feel like I have anxiety at this point. I won't say at all, but it's like I can see it coming a mile away and recognize it exactly for what it is, and I can do something about it. And I have
and that's the thing is anxiety is a normal response. Like
yeah,
it's okay to have some anxiety. That's a normal physiologic human response. It's obviously if it's debilitating and affecting function, that's a whole different thing and a whole different, and you have to, dig into. But that's wonderful because like now you have a tool or have gotten through, a tool that actually has gotten you to the other side where it's like, well, you see what it is and it's completely controllable.
Well, it smoothed me out, really smoothed me out. I've stayed in touch with that. As part of this whole thing, going into it, you follow this thing called the dieta, a diet, and you eliminate sugar. I don't use sugar at all, like on anything. In the last 2 years, I completely eliminated that from my diet. Like I said, my weight dropped about 12 pounds and it stayed off, I don't know. Now here's the thing. Like I would stop short of saying, "Hey, go do this." It's a big.
I would too.
Yeah, it's a big thing. Like
it's new, and it's new. So I mean, you're talking, like you said, there's studies going on at Johns Hopkins. I know of some other studies. I know of a book that I just read that's got some studies in other countries. But we're really just the physiology of how this is working. We don't fully know and understand. And so this isn't something to dabble in. This is something to go on a trip with or whatever. I love that you've shared this with us, and thank you, because I do believe there's part of this that will be the future that'll be a lot more common, kind of like, not to get into this, but like ketamine use now. There's, for depression, and we currently use, ketamine nasal sprays in the office in a very microdosing controlled way that help people with mood and anxiety and depression, and it works wonderfully. So, but we're just scratching the surface right now. So yeah, you do have to take this very carefully.
Well, you do have to take it carefully. And honestly, literally my life is bifurcated between sort of a before and after moment. Like, this is a top 3 experience in my life. There's no doubt about it. It's huge. It has the potential, I should say, to reorient you completely to life. It has me in countless ways that I can't even begin to get into on just a quick discussion about it. And in ways that I can't even communicate, really, because there's no real good words for it.
It's hard to, yeah.
But boy, you really have to be ready for that, because this was a 2-night ceremony. The first night was like really great. The second night was super challenging. They talk about bad trips. I don't think it was a bad trip, but it was sure challenging. Anyway,
but I will share this. So it was enlightening for you, which I had no clue you were doing this, and I had no involvement at all. And you were so moved, and you were so different, that you texted me at a weekend and you said, I need about 45 minutes to an hour. It was a group text with a few other, close people to you. And you wanted to get us on the phone and talk and share this with us because it was so profound.
The close people.
Thank you.
Well, it was you and my brother. That's the close people. It was like, you do have this feeling afterwards, at least I do, because I'm a kind of a promoter personality. It was like, shit, I wanted to tell the world. It's like, our politicians need to do this. I mean, everybody needs to. I can be a bit of an advocate, but I'm clearly not being that. I'm saying this is a very personal decision for anybody. Do your own research and understand your own limitations. But I can say for me that it was hugely impactful. Will I do it again? I don't know. I don't know if I don't know why I would necessarily. I don't know. I'm not jonesing to do it again.
It has a place and a purpose. So also let me just, before we kind of wrap up in that, I want to just say one thing. I brought it up before, but it's so key because it really does stick in my brain a lot. And I always have done this, I think, in my medical practice. But you, man, you are it's part of your being the success of the Underdog and your success at Loomis and in advertising and everything, but is this cultural building and in the workplace. And I know I'm really shifting gears off of the plant medicine stuff here, but I want to bring this up before we leave, because I will tell you, it's so key. And I kind of was doing this at the office in the sense of just my employees and really building something that they wanted to come to work to, and people are laughing and having fun. And then I realized, after literally me and you years ago had talked about some stuff, and I did read your book and about how culture is so important. And I visited your advertising place of business and met people, et cetera, and how that is so important to have that to a place you go to every day, almost every day. And how me focusing a bit on that for our offices and our practitioners and our 27 employees, that it's exciting and people are happy and we laugh and we love and we have patients that come in and laugh and we have banter. And it's like a family. And I thank you, by the way, for that, because that was something that I'm like, wow, he's successful. This is something he's proud of and does. And I really started to lean into it, and it just helped more.
Yeah, dude, it's a real strategic advantage to have. Who doesn't want to be the place everybody wants to be? And it doesn't. And I think sometimes old school leadership misinterprets it and thinks, oh, we're not going to be a hard charging, high performing culture. That's just wrong, man. When the best people want to work for you, guess what? You become high performing.
They show up and they're excited and they're creative and they're happy, they're smiling, and they're, I used to have to, by the way, have meetings and remind my employees, and this is more like 10, 15 years ago, like, listen, people come in the door, and they're sick and they're struggling. And, remember, not just that we're helping them heal and that, but we're really giving them some love and giving them some attention that they deserve and need. And so remember, like, leave your stuff at home, leave your stuff on the, you know, because the reality is, you know, they're coming here and really needing something and they're seeking us, and it's an honor for us to partake in that.
Yeah.
I don't have to do that anymore. I never have to have that talk or that meeting or that, you know, because it's just, we build this culture. People are happy. My employees are happy and the patients are happy. And it's like, and I think that, man, if I could reproduce and reproduce and reproduce, I would churn that in medicine over and over.
Well, it all perpetuates, you know, you build this virtuous loop, this virtuous cycle, and it starts to build on itself. And you don't have to keep reminding them, because that is what they do. Negative loops do too. And you can get into these toxic cycles that are really hard to break, and then you attract the wrong people, and now you got just this disaster of a place to work. And who wants to spend their life like that? That's the other thing too. It's like we spend so many of our waking hours working. Man, why don't we just enjoy the ride? That's what we're all here to do.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly. Like we always do. Enjoy the ride.
We do.
Yeah. So, hey, you know, my last segment, you know, my last part here, I always do my black book. So Mike being in Dallas, Texas right now, I sent him excerpts of, you've seen on my other podcast. And I think the last one I did, I think I threw Matt Schaefer, Uncle Cracker, for a loop on that one, man, because he didn't know what to say. I think he was.
Really?
Yeah. But so you have excerpts from my private book, my kind of memoir of things that I've done for years. And so you get to randomly pick from that if you want to ask me something, or what. By the way, Doc, what the hell did that mean? What do you? By the way, were you eating a plant that night, or what was going on?
Yeah, right on. Well, first of all, I compliment you on being so self-reflective. I didn't realize that you had this journal, and so it was interesting to kind of flip through the pages that you sent me. And I'm like, oh man, there's some really great questions in here. And honestly, there were two. You know, the one that I was going to go with, but I'm not going to go with this, so I'll tease this one, is people die the way they live, which I think that's really interesting, and there's a lot to be said on that.
We could talk for 20 minutes on that. So
I know. But I really like the one that I landed on, and that is that the only real opponent is yourself. So speak to that, Doc.
Yeah. Well, I think we've all had struggles, you know, we've all had part of the journey and part of challenges. I think in life are always ups and downs. I always say, if you're going to wear the crown, you know, it's like the crown's up and down and up and down and up and down, you know? And, you know, I think getting through those things create character and create, you know, resilience and all that, you know? And, you know, I think the funny thing is that when I write these things, they sound great, you know? And so I like put them on paper, and I like have to, you know, like think about it, you know? So I'm not sure where my head was right then. But you know, it's just, I think you become stronger, more confident, and more resilient and more purposeful when you reflect and when you've had things that you've had to get through. And I'm probably not answering that fully the way I was at the time. You know,
well,
in fact,
I think it's a good answer. So I really liked it. And here's what it made me think of. And this is something I used to tell my kids all the time. And in fact, I just did have a talk with my daughter Regan not too long ago about this, but it's this.
Read it one more time. Read it one more time just for everybody.
Yeah. The only real opponent is yourself. Okay. So there's a sort of a Buddhist story or a philosophy around the second arrow. Do you know what the second arrow is?
Haven't
Okay.
heard.
So you get hit by an arrow. Boom. That is the pain that is not optional. That hurts. I got an arrow in me. What do we do with that? We start complaining about the arrow in us, and we start bitching and moaning. Boom. That's the second arrow. Yep. That is the optional suffering. So it's like something bad happens to us, not optional. That sucks. What we do with that, that's completely our option. And what I like about your quote here is the only real opponent is ourselves. Is that how do we relate with this stuff? You know, do we lean into the struggle and succumb to it, or do we do something more productive with it?
Yeah, I think when I wrote that too, you know, what's funny is I kind of think like, or you know, when I captured it, you know, there's probably a time that, you know, I was probably struggling with something, but I will tell you that I've always, you know, been proud of this, is that when there is a struggle, you just find a different way and you adapt and you shift, if you will. And you definitely don't moan and bitch about it, even though I have, we all have done that. You get a little bit, and you're allowed to do that for a minute. I tell my own kids, like, you're allowed to do that for a minute, but you gotta figure it out, and it's no one else's fault but your own. And you create luck, luck doesn't just happen, it can, but most of the time it's created if you really reflect on it. And so I think, when I probably wrote that, it was more like, I was probably just like, I was either proud of something I overcame, or I was like, man, Jim, get your shit together. Okay?
Yeah.
You can take a different shift.
Yeah.
You can take a different shift into this and kind of approach it a different way. But I did a podcast with another physician, Dr. Romanian, and we talked about this a lot. And we both loved the fact in our life, being a physician, is that when somebody told us to, which is just an attitude thing, that we couldn't do it, or you wouldn't be good at it. Oh, tell me that. Please tell me.
Yeah.
Because I'll do it.
I like that.
I'll do it, or I'll figure it out, or I'll, do it better, or you name it. And so that's also part of that, that quote.
Yeah. I love it. Either way, I like that quote a lot.
Yeah. It's good. Good stuff. Well, Mike, hey man, awesome having you here. Such a pleasure. And seriously, from the, depth of my heart, I really mean this, man. Thanks for sharing, because this is the emotional stuff, the stuff you shared is real stuff. And I'm telling the audience, man, I see this in the practice all the time. People are struggling, and, we put up a shell, we put up, a face, and we're in posturing a lot of times. And, just, appreciate that it's real stuff, Mike, that you shared, and thank you. And you can get through it. What you really need is you need love around you and support around you, and be willing to be a little bit vulnerable with somebody, whether it's your doctor, your wife, your best friend, your brother, whatever, so that you can get help. And also, I want everybody at least out there to hear, because we touched upon it and you did also, is that there is many reasons for mood stuff. There is chemical, biochemical, situational, even iatrogenic, which means doctor induced. I know that, like, your experience. And so, there's always a better way. And but thanks so much for sharing that. I mean, it's means a lot to me and my audience, and I do value that. But hey, Mike, this has been awesome. We probably have to do a whole show just on motocross, but I'm going to try to get Roger Foster on, or some other, pros, we'll get some other pro guys, and and we'll probably have to promise some like free advertising or something though, but we'll figure that out.
We'll have to call John Martini to get him on.
Yeah. There you go. Well, thanks, Mike Sullivan from Loomis, CEO of Loomis, awesome ad agency, really big, building culture. The voice of the underdog. Again, I really appreciate you here at the Deep Six podcast. Stay tuned, because we're always leaning into things for your health, for your life, for your journey, and for happiness, and bringing you the best always in a functional medical deep dive approach. This is Dr. Lewerenz.